Oh, this looks like a juicer, baby. A juicer, destitute lord, the division of the nine.
So there has been a ton of focus on the disparate story elements of Heresy, but one that's kind of gone a little bit under the radar for a while has been the sudden resurgence of the Nine. For Destiny generally, they've always been there in the background. After all, I see Fallout's Xur video every single week, so nothing's changed there. But here's the important reality behind a lot of it. The Nine are one of the least understood bits of Destiny's lore. It's been since back in the time of Prophecy, the dungeon that released with Season of Arrivals, that I've actually covered them in any regard. So I'm going to be committing now to doing a long, refreshing video when Rite of the Nine comes out. That will be a big task. I'm gonna call it right now, it's a bit of a mega video. Today though, I wanted to just do a little smaller video on Division, although the script on this is 9 pages long, so who knows how long this will actually be. This is some fresh new lore that's come along, which is to do with the Nine and the schism that's been brewing in their ranks for years. With the death of the Witness and the change that has taken over the Traveler, the entire dynamic of the universe has changed. The Nine are going to change with it. Anyway, back to the lore. So, first things first, I guess we should go through a small refresher on what the Nine are. I talked about this briefly at the end of the Vow of the Disciple lore stream that I did recently. In the brief summary of it, however, I discussed how the Nine have always been very hard to define, and I brought up the original piece of lore in the Grimoire cards for them. But there is some stuff that we can now pin on them as far as defining what they are. So let's talk about some of that. One of our biggest sources of lore on the Nine comes from the first-person account of a Cryptarchy rebel called Lavinia. The lore book in which she seems to make a lot of her discoveries is called Dust. Dust is a word that relates a lot to what the Nine actually are. In fact, the entire point of the book is showing off Lavinia's journey through her quest to discover this very question, namely what the Nine are and what are their origins. There are quite a few relevant passages, but the one I like to refer to is from the moment after she makes one of her biggest leaps of faith. She steps through the Cocytus apertures, which seem to be controlled by the Nine. If you don't know what they are, I'm going to link a video on that in the description below. The short version is that they are portals that can be found out near the reef. Portals that link into other dimensional...
No shit. That's pronounced Cocytus? Brother, we've been calling that Cocytus now for years. Can you believe that? It was a scout rifle, and a good scout rifle, like arguably one of the best scout rifles.
Spaces including the realms of the Nine, when they took over them after the defeat of Crota. This is near the end of the story in the lore book of Dust. It also leads partly into the final entry of Dust called The Witch, which I'll also be reading immediately afterwards. Take a listen. I am. 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 I. At first, this is all the loop of Dust can calculate. It is the hardest thing in the universe for the Dust to make a loop at all, because, like a gust of wind or a river, it was only meant to move one way. For a mind to function, the end of one thought must alter the beginning of the next. So, like rivers, like wind, the Nine could not have minds until they could make loops. Lavinia Garcia Umar Tarvil comprehends the Nine. They were already ancient when the first human beings named themselves. Their flesh was older than stars. The dark dust wind that blows through the galaxy, pinched by the gravity of Sol and its planets, drawn into their cores and exhaled again. These were the Nine.
Live disconnected? Hold on. TikTok just disconnected for some reason. Your live contains themes that some may find uncomfortable and has been restricted. Reasons: it violates community guidelines. Jesus, this is our first time being live on TikTok. All right. I mean, we're talking lore right now. I don't know. Maybe that's... Oh, it's Cocytus. I bet it was Cocytus that got us. TikTok, I want you to know, if that is a weapon, we're not saying cock. That is a scout rifle, or in Bive's case, it is based on lore and not a penis, but a scout rifle.
In time, loops did form. Great arcs of outbound dust collapsed back to their sources to create circuits of shadow. The thickening and thinning of these circuits were the first thoughts of the Nine. They dwelt in massive indifference, unborn primordial gods. There was no force among them except gravity, no structure except the distribution of mass. Their hearts were in the cores of the worlds, but their farthest streams faded out into the turn of the galaxy. They were the fountains of Achilles, the night before chaos. But life arose on the worlds at the heart of the Nine, tiny complicated motions of ecosystems and metabolisms and computations. That life left mass shadows in the wind of the Nine, plucking at them like harp strings. From these trembles, the structure of the Nine learned to seed enormous resonating waves, thoughts vaster than worlds. So the Nine awoke, and in time they understood that they were as fragile as they were mighty.
Alright, so gain
For if the
consciousness.
life that seeded their thoughts ever passed away, they too would vanish. They had no eyes to catch light. They had no ears to hear. And yet, they turned their wills upon the alien world of matter, and strove to learn, for they knew they had to protect their hearts, or die. With a horror of revelation so absolute that it would drive her mad if she still had sanity to lose, Lavinia understands where the Nine have always been. They are within everyone, every system, every living and moving thing. Trillions and pentillions of slim, dark matter tentacles plunged through all our bodies, drinking up the complexity of our lives and thoughts. We are all pinched silhouettes, impaled on the twitchings of infinitely long spider legs. Came now the Traveler, and with it a strange hope. For the Traveler's light had the power to cause without causation. If the Nine had the light, they could seed their own minds, free themselves from the dependence on matter life. They could gain forces beyond gravity to structure themselves, and so become more than wraiths of dark dust. They could enter the mad alien superworld of our chemical reality. So they turned to this new hope, and were divided.
Ooh. Alright.
Come to me, a voice calls to Lavinia. Although there is nowhere to go, nothing to be, not even emptiness, but the absence of anything to be empty or full. Lavinia perceives...
Let me just read it. Come to me, a voice calls Lavinia. Although there's nowhere to go, nothing to be, not even emptiness, but the absence of anything to be empty or full. Who the fuck? Who's writing this? I gotta read it. No. There's nowhere to go, nothing to be, not even emptiness, but the absence of anything to be empty. But the absence of anything to be empty or full.
A sandstorm blowing against itself. Come, the voice calls. I am Nasya. You are not safe. Come with me. Not safe? No, of course she is not safe. Because there are factions among the Nine. One faction sent Zur and Orin to study Guardians and the Light, to seek the secret of effect without cause and to protect the source of that secret. The last source, now that the Ahamkara are gone. Those 5 played at alchemy with the Cocytus Gates, turning dark dust into energy and then into matter. But they could not unlock the secrets of our mad existence. They needed ambassadors, go-betweens.
Okay, alright, that makes sense.
The other faction walks a different path. A path of folds and needles slipped through space-time itself.
Okay.
Existential syringes yielding new spaces to be remade as the Nine desire. They have tried to gather enough dark dust in one place to form a black hole, and found it difficult. When the dark mass collapses in gravity's fist, the dust passes through itself and scatters. But difficult is not impossible, and there is far, far more dark matter in the universe than bright. They will find a way to make new worlds of it. They will end their dependence on life, and on the light of Guardians, which the falling veil will soon snuff out forever.
But it
in
did,
passing,
right?
Lavinia sees the entire history of the Queen's interactions with the Nine. more than anyone suspected, and more vital. She sees how one of the 9 blinded guardians to Gaul's approach, risking everything, for Gaul would have destroyed the sun and the 9 with it, to learn how to steal the light. She sees how that one was punished. "Come," Nasia calls urgently. "Come with me, quickly, before..." Something dark and hypodermic pierces the void beneath Lavinia and slurps her down, pulls her through a proboscis so tiny that it breaks her apart into a stream of single particles, one after another. She is annihilated. And reborn. Somewhere, somewhen, made of flesh again. Shaking and dripping, fear sweat mewling like a little baby. Her cheek presses against a warm wooden floor. There's a fireplace, and a fire in it, and strong wind outside that sucks at the flames. The clever-looking old lady at the desk looks up. "Ah," she says. "Lavinia, you made it." "Ugh," Lavinia gasps. "What?" She smiles, as if Lavinia's confusion is the sweetest greeting she's ever heard. "Don't be afraid. You've come to exactly the right place." "Where?" "Someplace you're appreciated, where we can really use everything you've learned." The old lady pours a thin stream of tea into a cup of bone. "Didn't I tell you that you were lucky back when you were born?"
Who is that? Savathun? Is that Savathun?
So, a really quick note, we still don't know who that witch at the end is. It could be Savathun, it could be an awoken witch of some kind and description. It could alternatively be someone that is from the actual awoken homelands that were originally created back in the Distributory, who has now pulled Lavinia deep into the recesses of that singularity-based existence. We don't know. The speech and the cup of bone seems to imply Savathun, but there's no confirmation and nobody knows. All of this gives us a lot of information to work with though, particularly on the nature of the 9. I think at the core of it all though, we need to understand 2 basic ideas of what the 9 are, which are displayed with particular relevance in these lore readings. First of all, the 9 are dark matter that has become sentient through the formation of vast loops allowing them to create thoughts. More specifically, they are the dark matter dust that can be found all over the system. Secondly, the 9 are somehow related to the stellar bodies and planets of the system. Let's look at each of these ideas. First of all, we've got the clear link between the 9 and dark matter, which is made obvious by sentences in the lore readings such as, "They are within everyone, every system, every living and moving thing. Trillions and pentillions of slim dark matter tentacles plunged through all our bodies, drinking up the complexity of our lives and thoughts." This fits generally with the idea of what dark matter is, which is matter that we can't observe, but we can hypothesize the existence of, thanks to the presence of gravity and how dark matter seems to interact with it. I'm not going to get more into how dark matter works because, I mean, how many times have I talked about science on this channel and I've gotten it wrong? It's a fair few. I'm not a scientist. I'm going to admit that firsthand. So many people in the first time that any kind of scientific reference was made came out to correct me on things. I'm not going to try. Not my field. When I do have more knowledge on it, I will go ahead and throw that out to you. There's also a lot of talk in the lore here about how the 9 require us to exist so that their existence has context. In this sense, the idea of them being dark matter also makes sense, because they're kind of like a silhouette to our existence. We, as bright baryonic matter-based beings, make up the observable universe, and they, as the opposite of that, are silhouetted by our existence. However, the next point of relationship seems to be between the 9 and the stellar bodies of Sol itself. We can tell this from lines such as, "They were already ancient when the first human beings named themselves. Their flesh was older than stars. The dark dust wind that blows through the galaxy, pinched by the gravity of Sol and its planets, drawn into their cores and exhaled again." Additionally, there's another line. "Their hearts were in the cores of worlds, but their farthest streams faded out into the turn of the galaxy." So this kind of plays with the idea that the Nine aren't just dark matter dust, but they are also intrinsically connected to the stellar bodies of Sol in particular. Remember, there's also that line stating that if Gaul destroyed the sun, he would destroy the Nine with them.
Yeah.
So it's not as though the Nine are outside of our system, they are intrinsically tied to it and to our planets. If we go all the way back to the first entries in the Dust Lawbook, we can also see more hints to this idea. In the entries called the Red Box, the Bone, and the Kell, Lavinia learns more about the link between the Nine and the Ahamkara. It appears that their interest in them is the same as their interest in the Guardians. They desire paracausal power, the power of something that can make something real without cause and effect. In other words, the paracausal ability to make themselves real, and thus no longer be dependent upon us for their own existence. At least, some of them have followed this path. We'll get more into that later as we talk about division, but it's already been hinted at in the Witch lore entry, which I read earlier. In this process of discovery, Lavinia basically uncovers that the Ahamkara were changing Venus at the behest of the Nine. This is in particular thanks to Skolas, who she found a recording of in the moments prior to his trial and his death at her own hands. There is one part in particular that is really relevant, where Skolas says the following. I saw the shape of the Nine on Venus, a place that was once precious to them, where wishes could transfigure their flesh. I saw that they are bound to this star and to these worlds. You are of a kind in that way, you and the Nine. Not I. I will be glad to leave this world, Marasov. I am tired of being a pawn. And yes, in case you needed more clarity on it, this is a speech that Skolas is making before he dies in the direction of Marasov. He says a lot regarding the Nine, but this does explain a lot of what happened to Venus. You might not necessarily know, but the Ahamkara and the Nine are related through Venus. It appears that the Nine made wishes for their flesh to become corporeal, and thus the Ahamkara went to Venus in great numbers, because they were looking to grant this wish. In the time, this is actually the reason why the Great Hunt started, because the dragons were doing things uncontrollably. They were changing the surface of Venus in a manner that was chaotic. The Nine were being brought into being, and humanity was scared because they didn't understand what was going on. And so, the Great Hunt was conducted, and the chance for the Nine to use this method of becoming corporeal was snuffed out with the Ahamkara. Oh my god. Bringing it all back to the central points of it though, it appears that the Nine are tied somehow to dark matter, and somehow to the planets, or at least the celestial bodies of this solar system. We also know, thanks to the lore, from some of the 9 weapons from both Prophecy and Trials of the Nine, that there are indeed 9 of them. 9 personalities. If they're related to the celestial bodies of the system, you could interpret that as Sol and its 8
right, the 9 stars
planets,
made the 6, yeah.
Or the 9 closest planets to Sol, including Pluto. Or perhaps it's just the 9 celestial bodies that are named in Music of the Spheres from all the way back then, and the dreams of Alpha Lupi. Not sure. Depending on whether we're still calling Pluto a planet, and depending on how relevant Alpha Lupi is, maybe one of those counts. Either way, if you want to find out really, I'd suggest asking one of the Bungie narrative team perhaps, or at least for the Pluto thing, find Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's got the update on that one, I'm sure. I'm not an astronomer. Either way, that next major point about the 9, that they are divided, is one that gets to the heart of the matter.
Yeah.
Pun not intended. Yeah, it's to do with the division sidearm.
Wow.
By division,
literally
I mean
in the
both
name.
the concept and the sidearm, of course, because, well, yeah, the division between the 9 is what was stated in the Witch lore entry, and it is indeed something that splits them fundamentally. There are indeed 9 members of the 9, and they are currently split 5-4 in the favor of the faction that is helping humanity in the Last City. In particular, the passage from The Witch points out that the group of 5 is the group responsible for sending matter through the Cocytus gateways, sending us Xur, and sending us the Emissary. They are even apparently a group where one amongst their number allowed Gaul to approach the city unhindered, thus meaning that the Red War was able to begin with that devastating ambush, and Gaul was then able to successfully steal the light. The group of 4, on the other hand, is attempting to do something rather more drastic. They're trying to cut their dependence on us for their own existence entirely. They've been attempting to gather up enough dark matter to create a black hole, and within it they are going to attempt to create new worlds that can be bent and morphed to their will, thus allowing themselves to exist within those worlds and be separate from our own.
Dude, okay, first up, there is no way we have a future expansion where we as Guardians somehow go inside of a black hole. But it would make sense, although timetable-wise, isn't that extremely... So if you're trying to create more planets, isn't the theory that galaxies orbit black holes? I have a black hole that you can enter. Oh, that's nice. Galaxies have a supermassive black hole at the center. Yeah. That's interesting. I don't know. I mean, we could live in a future expansion inside of Destiny where we approach a black hole. Or even maybe go inside one.
This is not a new idea in the lore, by the way. It's something that has been explored by both the Awoken and Savathun. In the case of the Awoken, they came from the Distributory, which is a world that has existed for billions of years outside of real time and where time has sped up much more quickly. Within that place, the Awoken existed within the reality that was created by Mara Sov. And in that reality, they were kings and queens. They were essentially able to live a perfect, dictated life. However, supposedly Savathun has also thought up this possibility and how she might use it to her own ends, in particular to gather a great degree of destruction and thus tribute in the name of the sword logic. Needless to say, the situation has changed now that she's a Lucent Hive. And the situation also depends on how much you trust Truth to Power as a lorebook. Spoiler alert, don't trust it. It's notoriously dishonest, let's put it that way. The second faction of the Nine, regardless, was intent on following this same course of action, of creating a black hole and then escaping into it and escaping into a different plane of reality as a result. A plane of reality where they would be able to...
My life is a black hole. Bonsai, don't be coming in here with that depressing shit right now. Bruh, don't be coming in here and dropping some depressing shit like that on a Tuesday afternoon.
To make themselves manifest with their own wills. That course of action is something that was also decided upon thanks to the potential incoming arrival of the Witness. They wanted a way of escaping Soul and leaving it behind with its doom so that they would not have to regard the final shape with any care. Regardless of the division between the Nine, they have been there in the background for the whole of the time of our story, and despite the schism between them, their goal has roughly been the same. They wish to free themselves from their dependence on us and to survive in the process. They wish to become, as we might put it, more real. Real enough that they can exist without us. Either by becoming a part of the...
This is some like severance bullshit. I mean, what if we're the Audis and then the 9 versions of us are the innies and they're just trying to get out, man. They want to live life. They want to live life. I get it.
Perceivable baryonic structure of the universe, or by creating their own different plane of reality within which they can will themselves into existence. But now, thanks to division, we can start to see a change in these great mysterious entities, and we can see where things are going next. Before reading this fully, I should let you know how some of this works, because the 9 in the lore actually being read, they're a weird bunch, right? There are technically 9 different voices. You can identify 9 of them individually.
Okay.
And you can tell how many of them there are because each of them uses different syntax and grammar when they speak within a sentence. As I said, I will be going and making a massive mega video on the 9, and in that I'll be telling you all my own nomenclature for each of them. Naming them is something that's very useful because, yeah, it allows you to explore intentions with them and it gives you an idea of what's going on, which side they're on, what's happening, etc. For now, just know that with each of them there is a different voice and a different style of speech in these lore tabs for each one. In particular, we can see a bunch of voices within Division, but we also get an interesting idea of what's happening within the 9 just from the flavor text, which reads, "An Enneagram tips, poised to shatter." For those of you who don't know, Enneagrams are a pseudoscientific method of classifying someone's personality types. If you've heard of a Myers-Briggs test, it's kind of like that, except instead of 16 types, there are only 9 Enneagram types of personalities. So in the flavor text here, it's basically hinting at the idea of the division between the 9, which is poised to escalate as the Enneagram shatters. And yes, 9 voices within the 9 Enneagram types, it lines up really nicely.
Holy shit!
The lore tab itself expands on this, showing how in the wake of the Witness's defeat, the split between the 9 has only grown wider, and how one of the factions is going to take action very soon. Take a listen. Our children live. The threat of Sol defeated. We remain. We remain. A foolish thought. A threat defeated is our opportunity wasted. We remain bound. Such cruel exaggeration. Can we not engage in elegant conversation as we used to?
Oh my god.
How can we be prisoners when we need sapiens to ensure our survival? Do we not exist in response to their being?
Oh my gosh.
The final shape thwarted by the light creatures. The necessary idiocy of the Witness, non-viable means of escape.
Are y'all seeing it right now?
A childish viewpoint. Sourness amplified by arrogance. Our fate, plain as gravity. Accept its pull or fall regardless. Your side is complacent. Worthless futility.
So what are the different personality traits?
The chains of matter. Reality is malleable. If only we will it so. Right strength lies in the bonds of us, bonds of matter, bonds of love.
I can fix them. I don't think so.
Your solution falls short. All tethers iron. Invented enemies, outscorned friends. Our divide ever wider. 9 foes, insolent denial. I mourn unity, grieve coalition, follow your foolishness, but if all you find is oblivion and the peril of our children, we all perish. We are inevitably going to revisit this in the times of the Rite of the 9, and yeah, as I said, big lore video on that one. Especially if there's more lore that comes along with the Rite of the 9. But for now, I think it'd be fair to say that the split here is still very much widening, and that in the process of pursuing their darker objectives, the uncaring members of the 9 will be out seeking a means of changing their existence, which puts us all in grave danger. I also think that it's worth pointing out that in Division, there are 8 voices of the 9 that you can see in that particular passage. As best I can tell, it's the most we've ever seen all of them assembled together with. But one voice is still conspicuously absent. Meanwhile, the division between the 9 on display is being debated in relation to what happened with the Witness and its defeat. Some of them are lamenting its defeat, as the end of the final shape means the end of another possible means of changing them into something real. Other members of the 9 rightly shout this point down, saying that the final shape generally was a non-viable means of escape. This then leads back to a more general divide between those members of the 9 that are trying to assist us and those that are trying to create the singularity. This is also an odd one because, unfortunately, due to the formatting, you can't see who's arguing with who. They could each be posing their own arguments in a succession, or it could be a general retort from one side to another. Anyway, if you look at the passage generally, I think those that are trying to assist us are the ones that are speaking near the beginning, which we've seen in other lore tabs from throughout the Lore of the 9 Weapons and Armor pieces from both Trials of the 9 back in the day, and from Prophecy. The voices in the latter half are mostly new, which we can tell thanks to their as of yet unseen speech patterns, which are new to Division. We've never seen these members of the 9 speak before, unless I'm mistaken. They appear to be from the faction of the 9 that is opposed to helping us, and wishes to establish their singularity within which they can make reality as they desire.
Black hole. The black hole.
Those later voices all seem to insist that their way is the only means by which they will be able to escape. But even here, there seems to be a bunch of back and forth. It's all guesswork for the moment, but it seems like the 9 are even more divided amongst themselves than they used to be. The only clear thing is that one faction of the Nine is making a risky gambit at the moment. A gambit that might destroy us all. I can imagine that if their goal is to create a singularity, or at very least to do something that allows them to attempt to become real, then there is an imminent risk to us. After all, if everyone in the solar system is swallowed up in a black hole, then our only possible fate is death, and the Nine will go with us, as without our existence to give them form, they will be nothing. We will revisit Division, count on it. We'll also revisit the Nine as a subject generally because it's been ages, and again, there's bound to be more lore that comes with the Rite of the Nine coming out soon. I want to do a bit of a mega breakdown when that happens, talking about the members of the Nine that we can identify, the objectives of those groups in more detail, what they've done thus far, and what we can understand about them. It'll be a bit of a mammoth project, but you know, it's caught my attention now, so why not? Also, this is technically the end of the video, so if you want to go ahead and turn off, go ahead and do it.
Everyone, go like this video. Guys, that was a lot. There was a lot that was said in that video. I don't know. You know, the Nine, I would say probably the most mysterious beings in the Destiny universe. I hope that it's interesting enough, and I hope that if this is the direction that we're going with for Destiny's storyline, I hope it's good, man. I just hope it's good. I hope it delivers. I feel like the Nine have been kind of like in Bungie's back pocket now for years. The Witness and Rourke and, you know, the Darkness, like all those things have been like, that's been the focus for so long. But like hearing about the Nine and like them being split, one of them blinded us to Goal's approach. Some were trying to use Ahamkara dragons to essentially give themselves form, but it was also changing Venus in chaotic ways. I don't know, man. I don't know whose side is right, really. I think the ones that are trying to make a black hole seem kind of scary. That seems like that can mess up some stuff, you know?
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.